Blog Talk Radio.
We'll never see you again.
I dearly hope so, my prince. There is so much more I meant to tell you. Everything you know is about to change.
American Daily Review.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Where then is the road to peace? Well, there's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
When America needed them most, two men rose to the occasion. Doug Gibbs of Constitution Radio and PoliticalPistachio.com. Jasmius of PoliticalPistachio.com, Constitution Radio, and the Hard Starboard Radio Network. This is American Daily Review on blogtalkradio.com.
I'm back, and I'm better than ever. Got a knack for making things better. Face back, 'cause your opinion don't matter. This a maniac is gonna step on whomever. Taking that street and house on, baby. I'm burning out the day.
No, Jasmius. Welcome to another edition of American Daily Review at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. The first 2 hours of the 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza. And the third hour today will be back on KMET1490AM.com, or KMET1490AM on your radio dial in the Gibbs pocket of Southern California for Constitution Radio, back where it belongs, back where we belong, after being preempted on the previous 2 Saturdays for exciting University of Redlands football. We'll be back this week and next week on KMET1490AM.com before we again go into preemption. But again, we'll keep you updated on that as the Saturdays unfold. Guest calling number is 646-595-4520. My email address, jasmius@comcast.net. Oh, by the way, who am I? I am Jasmius. I know you might have forgotten, because I disappeared for a week from everywhere. Politicalpistachio.com, the Hard Starboard Radio Network. I disappeared. I was off the grid, off the net entirely. I'll get to why in a moment. But my email address, jasmius@comcast.net. Of course, I host the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. Hard Starboard Radio will return on Monday at its normal time after a week's absence. And let me tell you about my week. Now, and by the way, I've been sick as a dog all week. I've had a horrible cough. I mean, so bad that it woke me up in the night. So I was already exhausted, and then I could barely sleep, because when I laid down to sleep, I would wake up coughing uncontrollably like I was drowning in my own phlegm. So I'm going to be popping Hall's cough suppressant drops like that, like they're Pez, just so you're aware. So if you hear the cough drop rattling around and near the microphone, then that's why. Now, I made mention last Saturday of the fact that of what was coming up this past week. And, of course, that was moving my father from Colonial Vista Independent Living in Wenatchee, Washington, to Silver Creek Assisted Living Facility in Graham, Washington, which is about 13 miles away from where I'm sitting right now. Which, trust me, is not an unmixed blessing, because now that we're so much closer, he's going to be pestering me constantly. In fact, he just called right before, like 5 minutes before airtime, saying, "Jam, pick up the phone." It's like, I guess he doesn't know. I guess he doesn't know that now 5 minutes before airtime, I'm not picking up the phone for anybody. See, I'm very, one of the things exhaustion does is it makes you, it totally drains your patience. You have no reserves of patience whatsoever. And I'll tell you what, I don't think I've ever been as exhausted as I was this week. I mean, it was the week, not the week from hell, but it was the week, or a week of hell, close as I ever want to get to it. Now, it started after the program last Saturday, all 3 hours on American Daily Review, podcast available at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. And Mrs. Hard Starbird and I drove over to Wenatchee. And now, when you think about moving, you think about, okay, well, you just start packing stuff up, right? Now, I'll start off by saying that the only thing I'll give my dad credit for is that he had an abundance of empty boxes. So I didn't have to buy any shipping supplies or moving supplies at the U-Haul place. He had all the empty boxes that we were going to need, and we ended up using every last one of them. And but you would think that the first thing you would do is start packing things up. Well, in my dad's case, you would think wrong. Because, see, the thing you have to understand about my dad, in fact, if I were to analogize him to any fictional character in movies or TV, and understand this is not a perfect match, but I would select Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. And I say that because he's not, my dad is not very considerate. He's always correcting people. And he has the most convoluted way of doing absolutely everything that you've ever seen in your life. And let me give you an example. On my now past visits over to Wenatchee, oftentimes we would go out to put gas in his pickup. Now, you would think going to put gas in the pickup would involve going to the nearest, not service, they don't have service stations anymore, but you go to the nearest gas station and pull up to the pump and, put in the credit card, pull it out, take out grab the nozzle, select what octane level you want, press that, stick it in the gas tank, and pull up on the lever and just set it going. And after you're done, you get the receipt and you go home, right? Not my dad. First of all, he had an additive that he always insisted upon putting in his tank with each tank of gas. So you think, oh, well, it's a little irregular, but it's not that big a deal. Well, the big deal is just starting. Because, see, he also wanted to save a dime a gallon on gasoline. The only way to do that at the Union 76 station in Wenatchee was to go in and buy what they called kickback cards. So we didn't buy gas at Union 76. We bought kickback cards. And then we used the kickback cards to actually buy the gas. So this is a process where I would have to take his credit card, go in, buy the kickback card, and then take the credit card receipt back to my dad, who couldn't, because he couldn't come inside to the cashier. Have him sign it, bring it back in, and then grab the kickback card, and then making sure not to forget to put the additive in. I mean, everything he does is convoluted, and it's a way only he understands. So with this preface established, we get to his apartment. His apartment was an ungodly mess. Now, I was aware of this, but I'd never had to move his stuff before either. And so I'm looking at this like, if you ever saw the Star Trek, the original series episode, The Doomsday Machine, when Commodore Matthew Decker, played by William Wyndham, took that shuttlecraft straight down the throat of the planet killer, and he got this look on his face of just horror, this horrified expression on his face, like, ah! That's what it looked like. It wasn't a question of just starting to pack things up. I had to, you see, my dad's way of organization, which only he understood, he had everything in bags and buckets. I swear to God, I am not making this up. Bags and buckets. And not just, plastic bags, paper bags, cloth bags. So we literally had to go through every damned last bag, every last bucket, seeing what was in each one. And then, of course, taking them out of the buckets and the bags and putting them in the boxes, and then getting rid of most of the damn bags. He had bags full of bags. Oh, and of course, there's all his extension cords. He has an entire, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like ivy going up the side of a building. He had all these extension cords, and they're all tied in these impenetrable knots that I don't think he could have untied them. I was tempted to just start cutting through them with my pocket knife. So we had to go through and take inventory of all this stuff that was in buckets and bags before we could even start packing things up and determine what to throw away and what to keep. I wanted to do it in terms of, okay, what is he actually going to need? And of course, that would have been a silly question, because see, my dad is what my late, dearly departed mother used to call a pack rat. He gets stuff, he never throws it away. He's got things, he's got tools that he will never use again because he's old and feeble. He's in a wheelchair. He'll never use that stuff again, but he doesn't want to let go of it. And so, I wasn't going to throw away his stuff, his tools certainly. So we brought most of his stuff, after getting it out of all the bags and the buckets, finally got it on the truck. And let me give a shout out of gratitude and thanks to Pastor Steve Whitney of Calvary Bible Church in Wenatchee, and a couple of gentlemen, one who came on Sunday afternoon, the other who came briefly on Monday morning, who helped us move his furniture, belongings, and that huge mound of crap out to the U-Haul truck. Without them, I couldn't have done it by myself. But we finally got all that stuff loaded up late Monday afternoon. I'm going to be quick on the cough button today. And returned to this side of the returned to Western Washington Monday evening. And then Tuesday, guess what? Got to turn around, go out to Silver Creek Assisted Living Facility and reverse the process, although not entirely. And this is where I give the shout out of thanks and gratitude to intern G. Hart, my son, and his friend, his big burly friend, who with moving experience, Travis Peterson, who were just they were both a godsend because there's no way I could have moved all that stuff in. In fact, I let them do all the work. I was already absolutely exhausted, and I was already sick. Let me tell you something, folks. Especially all you people, all of you out there, young couples looking to start a family, do yourselves a favor. Have at least 2 children. Don't just have one. Because the more children now I'm not saying go nuts like with that couple on the learning had that show on the Learning Channel where they had like 19 kids and they went batshit with fertility drugs. And I'm not talking about it, but have at least 2. Because if you have more than one child, then there is the work that's then this kind of thing, the work of this kind of thing, it can be spread out among more than one child. Because someday you're going to be old and feeble, and you're going to need to be moved, and you're going to need your children to do it. And if you only have one kid, it's all on him or her, like it was on me. Everything's on me. I'm the only child. I have no siblings, no brothers, no sisters, so it's all on me. So, do yourselves a favor. Don't only have just one kid and leave yourself in that position. Trust me. So we get all of my dad's stuff moved in Tuesday morning and then Wednesday morning. And then Wednesday afternoon, I had the wonderful task of putting everything away. Not the way my dad had it, where he's just had bags and buckets strewn all over the damned place. But things that I knew he wasn't going to need, guess what? I left in the boxes and I stuck them in the closet. Which is probably why he was calling me, because, I can't find anything. Well, you know what? Maybe that's a good thing, because you can't do anything with most of that stuff anyway. I think it'll help when they finally get his TV working. I still haven't figured that out, but that's another story. But that took like 7 hours. I mean, I got back up there at about 2 o'clock, and I was there till almost 9 o'clock putting stuff away. So I mean, and that was on Wednesday, and then you may have noticed there's one part missing here. Yeah, what about Dad? So Thursday, I am feeling like absolute warmed over death. I can't sleep at night because if I try to lay down to sleep, I wake up coughing uncontrollably. So I haven't slept more than 2 or 3 hours a night for like a week. And then I have to go all the way over to Wenatchee, sign my dad out of Colonial Vista Rehab, and bring him over all the way back over here all in one day. Now, driving is not nearly as arduous a task as moving, but the way I felt, I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to go, well, back to my recliner anyway. Didn't have the luxury. I'm it, only child, all on me. So I sucked it up and did what needed to be done. Got him over here. And then here's the Sheldon Cooper aspect again. Got him over. He had something to eat. Went up to his apartment. He was going to start me on a series of tasks. He had a mental to-do list. Well, I need you to do this, and I need you to do that, and I need you to do this other thing. And I said, Dad, I'm going home. I'm going home. I am beat to shit, dead tired. And, it'd be nice if you, well, I didn't say this part, but I said it'd be nice if you would, I was thinking this to myself, it'd be nice if you actually noticed it. And the one, the one thing I did not hear out of his mouth the whole time, all day Thursday. I did hear it. We did hear it on Monday. He did express gratitude on Monday, but the words I never heard out of his mouth on Thursday were "thank you." And so as I was going out the door, I said, "You're welcome." So what was I doing yesterday? I did absolutely nothing yesterday. Nothing, zero, zip, nada. I just sat in my recliner and watched TV. I didn't do anything else. Aside from bathroom breaks and having breakfast and lunch. And even that was arduous to get up. So, because I wanted to, like at the end of the first Avengers film where Tony Stark is taking the nuke up through the wormhole and then falling back through the wormhole, which, by the way, is not scientifically accurate because he wouldn't have fallen toward anything, assuming, of course, that the wormhole didn't have any graviton field. But anyway, he fell through it, and the Hulk caught him, and then he looked like he was dead, and then the Hulk goes, "Wah!" And then he goes, "Ah! Oh, please tell me nobody kissed me," you know. And then he says, "Oh, good job, guys. Let's just take a day." Yesterday, I took a day. So if you want to know where I have been for the past week, you want to know why I've disappeared from politicalpistachio.com, you want to know why I've disappeared from blogtalkradio.com/HSR network, that's why. And now you know what it takes to make that happen. And I can pretty confidently say that, he's going to have to move again for reasons that I'm not going to bother getting into because they're too depressing and frustrating and aggravating. And that doesn't have anything to do with him necessarily, but anything of that magnitude, that is now in the rearview mirror. Thank God. So, like I say, back to normal. I'll be back on politicalpistachio.com tomorrow. Back on the Hard Starboard Radio Network on Monday, and we shall roll forward.
I am Douglas B. Gibbs, and I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight? Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your bed many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
In every revolution, there's one man with a vision.
Perhaps today is a good day.
Douglas B. Gibbs.
Thank God you threw some stories together, because I got nothing.
Well, and I did okay at the beginning of the week, and as the week progressed, it got harder and harder to do it because this was one of my busiest weeks I can remember in a long time. So busy that, and this is not complaining, this is just fact, so for those of you who think I'm complaining, bite me. So busy that normally Wednesday night I put together tabletop news right before I go to bed. If I don't, I'll do it first thing Thursday morning. I didn't put together tabletop news to my printer's delight until Thursday night, which means he got it Friday morning, the day I deliver. Now, here's what's interesting about it. For some reason, it took longer than usual, probably because I was exhausted, and I pulled an all-nighter to do it. In other words, I got home at about 11:30 Thursday night, and I stayed up until 4:30 in the morning, put it together. Sent it to him, went to bed at 4:30, got up at 6:30 so I could go down to the farmer's market, do what I do down there, and then deliver all of those copies. I ran a little late on delivering those copies. Later in the day on a Friday, the more traffic he hit, and I didn't get home till 7 o'clock last night from doing that. And my wife says, "Doug, would you like to go get a bite to eat?" I said, "I've got lots of work to do." She says, "You've been doing nothing but work. We're going to get a bite to eat." In other words, it was no longer a request. So I guess, so my wife and I grabbed a little bite to eat. Nothing expensive because we can't afford expensive. But went out and got a little bite to eat and came home, and then I went straight to my bed and crashed. And I did not get up this morning until way late. In fact, you never even got an email. You've got to go to politicalpistachio.com to even know what the hell we're talking about today.
Yeah.
The rest of you go to politicalpistachio.com.
I always do that. I look for the ADR post. I don't even look for the email, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a holy cow, man. What a week. And it's good kind of busy. I'm not complaining. It's a good kind of busy. We've got a fundraising effort going on right now also for what I do. And Constitution Association, the Center for the Study of the U.S. Constitution, Constitution Radio, American Daily Review, and all the other things that we do are poised to take the next step, so to speak. And it's almost like getting ready to go through a portal to a whole new world. You're not even sure what you're going to expect, when you walk through.
Well, I tell you what, brother, it can't get here too soon for me. It really can't.
Well, I tell you what, Bobby Davis, who's the president of the American Freedom Alliance, said something interesting to me 2 Thursdays ago. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, 2 Thursdays ago it became official. I am the director of the Center for the Study of the U.S. Constitution. Yes, at the moment I'm a director of one, me, but they've applied for grants and funding and things that he wants to do with me. He's very impressed with my knowledge of the Constitution and my ability to research and so on and so forth. And excuse me. And so he says, well, one of the things we're going to do for you, Doug, we'll get you writing op-eds. I said, trust me, I write plenty of op-eds. He says, no, I'm not talking blog posts. I'm talking op-eds that are mainstream media ready. I'll help you adjust your writing skills because you're a great writer. The difficulty is you write very long for, what the public would normally want to digest. You learn to be a little more concise.
750 to 1,250 words, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I said, well, you say mainstream media, what are you talking about? He says, we're going to get you, to some of these bigger name, things. We'll start with the Times and we'll move up from there. We'll start with the Times and move up from there.
L.A. Times?
Yeah, L.A. Times.
Okay.
Yeah. And move up from there. And I'm thinking, well, the Times is about as big as you get when it comes to, print media out here, or at least local, print media. And so, he wants to get me, national recognition. Once people, he says, gets a taste of the way Doug presents the Constitution, they'll want more and more and more. And so that's the plan. But anyway, so kind of cool. I like the idea. I like his thinking. On the first week of October, we're meeting with a gentleman out this way that does a lot of donations and charity work, and helped his fundraising portion for a veterans charity just a couple months ago. He was able to raise $75,000. So I definitely am not worried about his abilities. Also, he has a radio program on KTIE AM 590, which is the bigger conservative station of the area. It's the station that carries Rush and all that jazz in the Inland Empire. And so get him on get me on his show. When I was talking to him, he was getting ready to have Larry Elder on his program. And I discussed with him. I said, well, I've met Larry Elder. Larry Elder was supposed to be on my program. We lost touch because when I met him, I didn't give him a business card because I had run out. I have learned since to carry many more business cards. And he says, oh, that's no problem. I'll send you Larry Elder's contact information. So I'm waiting for the opportunity to send that email out. Actually, I haven't done it yet. But so, things are looking interesting. Well, that all said, we've got stories to talk about, and there is some big stuff going on this week. There aren't as many stories, mainly because I'm not pulling from the vast array of stories that Jasmine puts on Political Pistachio, and partly because, even though it's been a very interesting week, it's the bigger stories are not nearly as many, I think, and it might just be because of your absence, and I just didn't notice how many things are out there, but we got a reasonable list, and that's actually a good thing. And the reason why is we have a guest today for the first time in a long time. Her name is Katie Kiefer. She's been on Fox News and various other outlets, and she has a book out there about how to get to the millennial generation, these 20-somethings and early 30-somethings. And she's a youngster herself. A lovely young woman. She has all kinds of interesting ideas. My thing has always been, in order to reach the younger generation, we have to convince them that they've been lied to. And I think they've realized that, but the question is, they think that the other side's lying too. We have to convince them not only that they've been lied to, but that we're not lying to them. And I think that's going to be the real challenge. But anyway, so 1 o'clock today on KMET 1490 AM, Katie Kiefer will be our guest, and she's also going to be at the October 2nd Myriad Temecula Republican Assembly meeting, of which I'm on the board, and I am going to be cooking a potato dish for that particular meeting. Grace and her daughter is going to be making tri-tip and desserts and other side dishes, and they usually, because this is a dinner meeting, but it's at a conference room. And so sometimes they'll cater, and sometimes Grace and her family will make a meal. And I asked them at the last board meeting, I said, well, what's your potato dish? And they said, well, we really haven't decided yet. So I might have one for you. Oh, you can give us a recipe? No, I'm going to offer to cook it and take some work off of your guys' hands. They're like, oh, thank you. I'm going to tell you right now, after they try my cheese potatoes, they will be begging for the recipe. This was my grandmother's recipe. This is my grandmother's recipe. My sister and I are pretty much the only ones that know this recipe. And once people try it, they demand more and more and more. They just love it. Kind of reminds me of my constitutional prowess. But so nonetheless, we're gonna. I'm ecstatic about that opportunity as well. So, but anyway. We got other things on the horizon, which we'll talk about at a later time. I think we need to get rolling down this list. But one last thing before we get rolling down the list. God bless you, brother, for what you're doing for your dad. You're a good son, and I understand the trials and tribulations of what you just went through. Not that I've done it, but I've been associated with it when it came to my grandfather. And the moving, and then you got the old man who, despite all the work everybody's doing, is probably not the most cooperative. On top of that, maybe he was in your case. My grandfather wasn't. It was hard enough to get him just to come out to California. But
it's not
God bless you. God bless you.
I mean,
I'm sorry?
It's not a question of cooperation. I mean, he was down in rehab. He couldn't leave rehab, or they'd cut off his Medicare. So
okay.
I mean, we were
so
up.
He didn't even get in the way.
No, it's not a question of cooperation. It's a question of complete disorganization.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, if you called in in time for my bags and buckets rant, but I mean, he has number one, he does everything in the most convoluted way imaginable, and two, he has an organizational system that only he understands and nobody else does.
Well, my mom had the same problem with her dad, with my grandfather. You know how she solved it? She sold everything. There was nothing left. It was just him and a suitcase, pretty much, by the time my mom was done with it.
Yeah.
Of course,
well,
granted he wasn't going into an apartment. He was going to my mom and dad's house. But and then he was, when I talk about uncooperative, it was a matter of demanding, And the man was he's very particular in a lot of things, and most of those things he's particular on are completely, for lack of a better way of saying it, back-asswards. But and he lived till he was 83, and there with my mom, and for a few years, and it was a blessing for the family, despite his cantankerousness.
Well, I'm gonna. Was he in a wheelchair?
No.
Well, my dad's in a wheelchair.
Yeah, no, see, that's good because my grandfather would start wandering around and getting into things we didn't want him getting into.
Ah, I see. Yeah. Like I said at the start of the monologue, if I were to pick a fictional character from TV or cinema that my dad most resembles, and understand this is not a total match, but I would say that his closest analog would be Sheldon Cooper.
He's that anal, huh?
He's got his own way of doing things. It's hopelessly complicated. He's always correcting people. He's not very considerate, and so it's just. But like I said, I mean, let me repeat that advice. All you young couples out there who are looking to start a family, have at least 2 children. Don't have just one. Think of them. Because if you just have just one, it's all on him or her. Because one day you're going to be old and feeble, and they're going to have to take over all your affairs and move you around and deal with your stuff. And if it's just one, then it's all on them, and that's really not fair. I can't tell you how much. I can't tell you how much I wished I had a brother or sister, or brother and sister, who lived over there, who could have dealt with this. They could have moved his stuff out to the U-Haul truck, and then we could have brought the U-Haul truck, and then we had 3 or 2 or 3 additional hands, and I mean, and I understand all of this. While all of this was going on, I was sick as a dog. So
that brings to mind a bumper sticker I see. Love your children, they choose your nursing home.
Well, in this case, there was only one to choose, so due to other circumstances, I'm not going to get into right now. So, well, let's get started on Constitution Corner. Why don't we?
Yeah, and this was actually regarding a response to a comment on one of the myths on political satire. One of the myths is that all of the founding fathers are deists or non-Christians, and the myths, of course, those posts later on were fixed up and became the 25 myths of the United States Constitution book. But anyway, so this one person basically put, why did you ignore the Treaty of Tripoli? And the Treaty of Tripoli says, and I don't have it in front of me, but it says that America in any sense is not a Christian nation. The author of that was John Adams. And the left loves to use the Treaty of Tripoli because, that's proof. The Founding Fathers believe this wasn't, well, first of all, it's the writing of one man. I mean, just like you can't take the writings of Obama or Clinton or Reagan or Boehner to completely define this generation. The founding fathers were not all of one mind and one soul. They had their differences, and John Adams was a Federalist. So, in other words, what I'm saying is, you need to take it all into context. Of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, all of them considered themselves Christians. 2 of them were Unitarians, so that wasn't an Orthodox Christian belief system, but it was of sorts. 2 of those people were Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, who are considered the deists, but yet they called themselves Christians. Maybe they weren't Christians in the traditional sense. Franklin was not exactly a church-going sort, but as he got older, he proclaimed that. He more and more noticed that God's hand was in what they were doing. The American Revolution, in his opinion, was an outright miracle and would not have won by the Americans had it not been for the hand of divine providence. Thomas Jefferson, in a letter that I have in my copy of my Jefferson's Bible, writes that I am a real Christian, all caps. And what he meant by that is he felt he was more of a real Christian over a lot of the people who were part of the Christian church. He had a real difficulty with organized religion and people who walked around playing Christian but necessarily weren't necessarily Christian. That's what I meant to say. So you got to take it all into context. Now, the Treaty of Tripoli was a treaty written before the Barbary Wars. John Adams was not only a Federalist, which were the big government people of that time, of which Alexander Hamilton was the ringleader, but also they were appeasers. In other words, they'd make great Democrats today. And that treaty was written to appease the Muslims. They had one with each of the nations that were a part of the Barbary coast. So you had Tripoli and Algiers and so on and so forth, and they had one with each of them. And John Adams wrote the part that we are not in any sense a Christian nation. Now, there were those that were very angry about it. In fact, his own Secretary of War was very upset about it, and basically said, if we're not a Christian nation, upon what is our foundation? And so it was a highly contested sentence, and it was a surprise that it was able to get ratified by the Senate by a lot of people because of that one particular sentence. It definitely created a lot of argument. Now, that said, just knowing that there was a lot of dissent tells you that it wasn't this thing that all founding fathers agreed with. So you can't use it as a end-all argument that the founding fathers weren't Christians. Also, you have to look at another piece of the context of this. The treaty was with Tripoli, a Muslim nation, and in many ways, what he was trying to write, and this came out later, is he didn't mean that we weren't a Christian nation in the sense that Christianity was not a part of our founding. After all, John Adams was the one who said that the Constitution was not made for anybody other than a moral or religious people. So there's a contradiction there. But he was trying to appeal to a society in which the church and the political system are one, and it's understood by the founding fathers that Christianity they hate beyond anything other than maybe the Jews. And so he was trying to tell them, hey, no, this isn't a religious fight. We're not a Christian nation like you're a Muslim nation where, it's a theocracy. That essentially was what he was saying. Even then, though, once again, a lot of the people who dissented against that sentence saw it as a sellout sentence, willing to say something that wasn't necessarily true just to appease the enemy. Interestingly enough, the treaty didn't hold. The Tripoli broke the treaty within a year or two later, and we wound up fighting 2 wars against the Barbary states. one under Jefferson and one under Madison. Jefferson, in fact, was so upset about the Treaty of Tripoli that it was one of the factors that led to the friendship of Adams and Jefferson to be strained, and I'm using that term loosely. And they were almost bitter enemies until later in life when they finally rekindled their friendship. And John Adams even came to say later on in his life, I didn't realize how foolish I was of listening to Alexander Hamilton. John Adams, though he was a Federalist and big government guy, was quite moderate for a big government guy, and really the real curse of progressivism began with Alexander Hamilton. That's something we'll talk about another time.
Adams could be said to be the Bush of his day.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Sure. Yeah, and Adams really had a problem with conflict and with foreign entanglements, and to a point he was correct. For example, when Britain and France were at war during his presidency, Jefferson wanted us to take France's side. He felt that it would be good for diplomacy. It would be good for us to be on their side for, possibility of borrowing money later, plus also to show, our break from Britain in an even deeper manner, and so on and so forth. And John Adams responded that not only should we not take sides, we shouldn't even verbalize if we have a side. That nothing should be said. It's none of our business. It's their war. We shouldn't be involved in foreign entanglements in any way, shape, or form unless it directly affects American interests. Jefferson was a little bit more of a war hawk compared to Adams. Now, what Adams did with the Muslims, going back to that treaty, is he was willing to pay the tributes that they were demanding. What was happening is on the sea lanes, they were capturing our ships, they were taking our sailors either as slaves or offering them for ransom. And they were still demanding that we pay tribute to use those waters, and this is what would be considered today international seas. And so, or international waters. Yeah, it was outright piracy. Well, it's Islam. And and Adams was willing to pay it, just like Washington had been willing to pay it. When Jefferson became president, he stopped paying the tribute. He said, "Hey, we're not going to pay to use waters that we should be able to use freely for trade. We're not going to pay for it." And what wound up happening is then the Barbary pirates declared war on us and attacked us even more so, and Jefferson responded with troops. If you remember the Marine Corps hymn, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli.
Tripoli, yeah. There
you go. That all started with Jefferson, and then Madison wound up also fighting a war with them right after the War of 1812. We literally went.
Hello. Look, he's going. I think Doug is going up. I forget the name.
We meant business. In other words, the way to handle Islam is to beat the crap out of them.
Well, that's the only thing they understand.
Right.
The difference between Islam and Christianity. In fact, the Muslims. I can't remember who said this, but somebody once called Christianity a slave religion and Islam a warrior religion. So the only thing that the Muslims understand is and respect is force and strength. And if you appease them and give them everything they demand, then they're going to look upon you as being inferior and weak, and they're not going to respect you. They're just going to look at you as prey, like a lion looks at a zebra. And so
it also goes down to their belief in the sense of the will of Allah. If you are giving in to them and appeasing them, then they believe what they are doing is within the will of Allah, and so it emboldens them to do it more. If they are fought against and they're put into a corner, then they believe the will of Allah is against them, and they must then disappear and wait for the right time. So that's a large part of it too. And so while you're appeasing them, that you're basically telling them, hey, we're winning, and Allah wants us to fight even harder doing what we're doing. And, so you embolden, and you've heard this, I'm sure, in political, circles out there when it comes to Islam. They're emboldening the enemy. Well, that emboldening of the enemy goes all the way back to their belief that if they're doing well, it's within the will of Allah, and therefore they must increase and continue to increase until it looks like they're being defeated. Then that means the will of Allah has altered, and then they need to back down and fight another day. That's the way they look at the world. So anyway, all right. So the Treaty of Tripoli, folks, was basically the 18th century version of the treaty that Neville Chamberlain had with Hitler.
Or that Barack Obama just signed with the Iranian oligarchy.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. All right. Next story, number 7, Stepwalker steps down. And it came down to just lack of money, and we've been watching his percentages drop. And I don't know what to do now on support because I'm a number cruncher. I look at records. I look at track record. I look at voting record. I look at past accomplishments. That's the kind of thing that means a lot to me. On top of, based on their actions, votes, and word, where they are on the issues. And Scott Walker was pretty much the only candidate where I really didn't have a bitch about on anything. And when it came to track record and qualifications, he was at the top of the heap. Everybody else has some major problems with. And actually, Carly Fiorina is looking good a little bit. Problem is, she's social liberal and she's a globalist. But she's a businesswoman. She's quite conservative on economics and all that. So. I'm liking her to a point. Problem is, alternate and non-politicians don't have a chance in hell.
There's.
As for the, go ahead.
Well,
as for the politicians, if he can hang on to money, and he's starting to find out that he doesn't have the money he thought he did, best bet might be Ted Cruz in the sense of conservatism. Problem is, he's not presidential. He doesn't know how to strategize, and he's not eligible. Rubio's starting to rise up, but I'm going to tell you right now, he's just as establishment as Jeb Bush and Kasich and Pataki. It's just he's better at hiding it.
Well, he hides it behind his ethnicity. That's why he's right. I mean, and he is probably the closest thing to a Republican equivalent of Obama. He's young, he's telegenic, he's well-spoken, eloquent, maybe even charismatic, and he's Hispanic, which just drives GOP consultants everywhere into paroxysms of orgasmic joy. So they're always going to be just thrilled with Marco Rubio. But there are two things I think that really can be said about Scott Walker. One is that Scott Walker is the Tim Pawlenty of 2016. Successful two-term conservative Republican governor of an upper Midwestern state who just never went anyplace. Fizzled, got into the race, started out at a pretty high level and just fell off, although that's kind of being unfair to Scott Walker.
It's interesting you say that because Pawlenty was my guy last election at the very out gate.
He was mine too. But the problem
now the thing is, here's the difference with Pawlenty and Walker, though, is I think Walker might return in a future election. Now, that said, the problem here is that most voters are not like you and I. They're not number crunchers. They look at their hair. Are they charismatic? Do they have a good smile? Do they say the things that get my heart pumping? That's what they're looking for.
Well,
I can't count how many times I heard someone say about Romney, well, he has the hair for it. Like, what the hell does his hair have to do with becoming president?
Oh, yeah, a lot of people said that, Romney looks like a president, whatever the hell that means. But
he looks presidential.
Well, but now that gets into the other thing, and it's about can be said about the fall of Scott Walker, and and it's really, this is where it's maybe not entirely fair to compare him to Tim Pawlenty, because I think that Scott Walker was the right man in the right place at the wrong time, because he ran for president right. I mean, he got in right at the very beginning of Trump mania, and he just got, like everyone else, he just got swept away by Trump mania. And that gets back to what you just got through saying about looking at the hair and he's so cute, or I like how his voice sounds, or what have you. Just all all the things the low information voters that don't really pay attention to the substance get caught up in. And and those are the voters. Sorry, these are the voters.
Got a little West Nile virus going there.
Yeah, I don't know what it is actually.
But we actually just had someone down here in Riverside County die from West Nile virus. First person to die since 2008 from West Nile virus in our area. And it turns out to be the vice president of the Constitution Association, Bill Prouty, a good friend of mine.
I saw that. But
anyway, continue on.
But it's all about entertainment. People don't people don't take politics seriously. They don't care about substance. They don't care about policy. They want to be entertained. And I'll tell you where that started. Barack Obama.
Trump has brought his apprentice to the political stage.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. And it started with Barack Obama, the biggest celebrity in the world. Celebrity in chief. And now it's infected the Republican side of the aisle too. And now everyone's flocking after Trump. Now Trump's numbers may be declining some, but not a whole lot. Harley Fiorina has risen. Ben Carson has been up there.
He's basically the flavor of the month, for a lot of these people. And then she'll say something will piss them off, and they'll go to the next flavor of the month until finally there's only like 2 or 3 flavors left standing.
Yeah, it's kind of like Russian roulette when you stop and think about it. Which is a very good analogy, by the way. So I don't know who. I don't even think it matters at this point.
Well, even though we have this saying that the worst Republican is still better than the best Democrat. Worst Republican is better than the best Democrat. But with some of these people, I'm not sure. Not quite so sure. Like people like Christie or whatever. But I'm thinking that Bush is going to run into some trouble. A lot of it is because of this immigration thing. Immigration is an issue that both sides, people are against illegal aliens for the most part, like 70% of the nation. And I think that's going to bite him. I think that's also going to bite Rubio.
I think it already bit Bush. I mean, as soon as Trump got into the race, if Jeb Bush had any chance at the Republican nomination, it died when Donald Trump announced his candidacy.
Because what launched Trump to the top? Talking about building a wall.
Yeah, and making Mexico pay for it. So every last pro-amnesty Republican, or those that even seem like they might be pro-amnesty, they pretty much lost their chances right there. I agree 100%. I just hope that doesn't leave us with someone like Pataki. It's not going to be Pataki. Pataki's been out of circulation for over a decade. Kasich is worse than Pataki. I mean,
that's true.
Kasich is a favorite son candidate. He would carry. He might win Ohio, but that's it. He's not going to win any place else.
And Ted Cruz, I don't think he can maintain it money-wise. I think the money things will push Cruz out. Rand Paul has disappointed a lot of people. He's kind of got the Scott Walker problem. He's not, looking very presidential.
And that's what happens. Money follows poll numbers. And if your poll numbers start to slip, the money's going to dry up. That's what happened to Scott Walker. It's that simple.
Which brings us back to who's going to pull this off. The one person that's really not going to have a problem with money is at the top, but he's
already
possibly a plant. So when I said there, it's possible that the worst Republican can possibly not be better than the best Democrat. Trump might be that.
Well, I mean, yeah. I've said it so many times before. I don't know what else I can say that y'all haven't heard in the past. Trump is a mercantilist Democrat who's pretending to be a Republican. It's like Jim Garrity said 3 months ago when Trump got into the race. He said Trump's been a conservative for about 10 minutes, and only on immigration. And on immigration, he's been pro-amnesty in the not too distant past. So I mean, but people don't care about substance. You got to remember that people don't care about substance. You can argue substance, you can argue issues. People don't want to hear about it. They all they care about is being entertained. Trump has universal name recognition. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows huge. And Deliberate Apprentice and the hair.
Is huge.
And the hair and the whole first class and all that rigmarole, and so people know that.
He hurt himself. He hurt himself in the last debate. Some of the things he said, he's making faces, stuff pretty childish, but not enough to knock him off the top.
No.
And I'm sure his consultants or whoever he's got around him pointed out, okay, Donald, I know you're not being cute, but you can't do it.
Being a jerk is built into his, to borrow a metaphor, a stock market metaphor. It's built into his stock price. People know that he's a jerk. That's part of what makes him entertaining. He's a jerk.
If I don't think he'll get it, but if for some reason he does wind up getting the nomination, I hope I'm wrong about everything I think of him. I really do. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's sincere. I hope he's seen the light and he truly has, he truly believes what he says. But I don't think it's true. I don't think he believes what he says. I don't think in this case the zebra has changed his stripes.
Very unlikely. There's no rational reason to believe he has. So.
Well, you judge people by what they do and who they hang around, and he hangs around Clinton and Pelosi, in his past, and Reid.
Yeah. And invited the Clintons to his wedding, or one of his weddings, anyway.
Yeah.
So. I mean.
Well, now the one thing about him though is he is real good at the catches. It's like the magical thing that he said. He took what was a damaging thing and turned it good. Came up in that first debate, how Fox debate, how well, you've given money to Pelosi and you've given money to Reid and you've given money to the Clinton Foundation. Rand Paul was saying this to him, and he says, "Well, Rand, I gave to your campaign too." And I mean, it was like he punched him in the face, and so.
Well, and Rand Paul left himself open for that one, because of course he's a businessman. He's going to give money to everybody. That's just the nature.
Or whatever.
That's just the nature of what he does.
That goes back to your mercantilism statement. He's all about crony capitalism.
He's not going to give money just to Democrats. But he's going to give a lot of money to Democrats. But that's the kind of thing you never bring try angles of attack that are guaranteed to smack you. It's like stepping on a rake. You don't step on rakes, and that's what Rand Paul did with that angle of attack.
Well, as you probably hear from the wind, I've arrived at the studio. So I'm going to, be doing other things as I try to maneuver here. But go on to the next story. Story number 7. The homosexual agenda. I tell you what, for lack of a better way of putting it, they are pulling no punches. They are doing exactly what you and I have expected them to do.
Mm-hmm. Now that they've got the
yeah, and the thing is, here's the problem: is you and I understand the argument that that this is all about preferential treatment. There, you know, it's, when people say, well, they use the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. So yeah, but where's the equal protection for Christians?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of usually my response. They say, well, Christianity though, that's a decision. So that brings us to the whole crux of this whole thing. As long as Americans look at this as if homosexuality is a civil right, we can't win. We are beat.
No.
But the moment we can change that and get people to realize this isn't a civil right, this is a decision, this is a behavior, and one way we can prove it is there are such things as former homosexuals. Change is possible, and if they're born that way and can't change, then there wouldn't be these thousands of former homosexuals. Then you're going to be able to change the argument. You're going to be able to change the fight. Our problem is we're fighting on their turf, on their premise, on their terms. As long as we fight it on their terms, we're going to lose it. We've got to make sure that we correct terms, and that begins with making people understand that it's not a civil right. Change is possible.
Well, of course, but see, you know that it's interesting you use the term change because you know, according the Marxist term for that was dialectic. The communist dialectic. The change only goes in one direction. It's like Barack Obama when he talks about being on the right side of history. In the left-wingnut's mind, history only goes in one direction, toward the progressive direction. And there's no such thing as changing back. That's regressive. That's reversing course. That's losing ground. That's moving away from the progressive direction. So they define change as only going in one direction. It's like I say constantly about the left is a series of one-way streets. And there's no exchange of ideas. There's no give or take. There's no live and let live. There's no peaceful coexistence. How many times have we said this? They are out to dominate. They are out to have total control, total power, and to destroy their opposition. And this is a prime example of it. When the gay rights crowd was, before they got power, they were all about tolerance. Then as soon as they started getting power, it started ceasing to be about tolerance and more about gay rights. Now that gay marriage is a quote-unquote constitutional right, what happened to tolerance? Kind of went out the window, didn't it? Which is another indication that tolerance, tolerance for thee, tolerance for me, but not for thee. They had to be tolerated, but now that they're in power, they're not going to tolerate us. They're not going to tolerate Christians. They're not going to tolerate anybody who doesn't bow down to the Crisco God and bend over and grab the ankles, and we are all homosexuals now. And so that's where we arrived at, and it's going to be hold on a second. And it's going to be a lot longer and harder road back for us, if we can ever get back, because the other side, the lavender lobby, as I refer to them, is not going to be as easily bulldozed as the Christian church was over the last few decades. They're gonna. It's like in X-Men: Days of Future Past, when on the plane to Paris, when Professor Xavier remarks to Eric Lencher that now we know where that future leads. they're going to get this weapon and they're going to wipe us out. Well, the Lavender Lobby is going to wipe us. They're out to completely wipe us out. We will not be allowed. I point this out again, folks. The only place that the only redoubt, the only refuge that Justice Kennedy left the Church of Jesus Christ is inside the four walls of the church of churches themselves. How long do you think that's going to last, folks? Because he didn't even. I mean, he left it kind of. But he didn't specifically say you can't to get the Lavender Lobby, gay rights groups. You can't go beyond the walls of the church. It was left very nebulous, very gaseous, and very ambiguous. And that's what's coming next. You're going to have pastors who will be forced to preach gay propaganda. Pastors will not be able to preach the Bible. If they do, they'll be frog marched from behind their pulpits in handcuffs and right down the aisle of the church, and maybe the congregation with them. I mean, this. If you ever wondered, I mean, my recently retired pastor has been saying for years, you know, we talk about voice of the martyrs and the persecution of the Christian church overseas is the worst that it's been since Roman times around the world. And if you think that's not going to come here, you just wait. It's coming. Well, here's how it's coming, folks. Here's how it's coming. It's through the mode of gay rights and gay marriage, and now here we are.
And that brings us to, Kim Davis, and she's the only one actually really following the law. If you look at things from a rule of law point of view, I can't count how many times I've gotten into these conversations with leftists, and they say, "Well, she broke the law." It's okay. What law did she break? Tell me. What law did she break?
She disobeyed Justice Kennedy. That's what she did, which is not against the law, by the way. I mean, she didn't break any law. She just disobeyed Justice Kennedy.
Then the first response is, yeah, but she's an elected official. So when you become an elected official, apparently the law is different.
Well, and she's a county elected official. So she was following county and Kentucky state law, which is what her job is. Because there is a Religious Freedom Restoration Act in Kentucky. So she was following Kentucky law, and I will point, as I pointed out before, so I shall point out again. She was not specifically denying quote unquote marriage licenses to homosexual quote unquote couples. She wasn't issuing marriage licenses at all. Right. She had privatized marriage in Rowan County, Kentucky. She wasn't discriminating. She wasn't issuing any marriage licenses. And so, I mean, now, getting back to people talking about Kim Davis breaking the law, well, the charge that she was on which she was jailed, disobeying a judge, right. David Bunning. She disobeyed a judge. That's what it was. So she didn't break any law. She just disobeyed a federal judge. That's all.
Yeah, a federal judge who said that the law, in his opinion, is not good. That he can legislate it any way he wants, and if he thinks it's wrong, then it can't be law anymore. Damn to the people who voted it in. Damn to their representatives. Forget all that noise. We'll learn that in California with Proposition 8. It doesn't matter what the majority of the people vote for or what our representatives put into place. That doesn't matter. What comes down is what matters is what a judge in a black robe says. And if the left can get enough of them in the right places, then that's all that matters.
And that is known as the rule of man or the rule of men, not the rule of law.
Which brings us to my quote: when you abandon the rule of law and you start following the rule of man, it's not very long before you start dancing around a golden calf.
Well, I mean, that's the definition of tyranny. The only way you can have a truly fair and free society is if everybody plays by the same objective set of rules. And if you want to change the rules, you have to go through the legislative process and there's public input, and it's debated in a transparent, open fashion. And then if there's enough public support behind it, then it passes. But everybody has to play by the same rules, because if not, then you're going to have one group getting power over another group, and woe be unto the disempowered group, because they're gonna get screwed. And this is what's happening to the Christian church in this country. Kim Davis is just the leading edge, as I've been saying for weeks now. Kim Davis is just the first. There are going to be plenty more where she came from. Not just county clerks, but pastors, Christians of all professions, all walks of life. The noose is going to tighten. They're not going to let up. The vice is going to continue to squeeze tighter and tighter, and pretty soon none of us are going to have any other choice. We're going to be put in a position where it's either, which Lord are you going to follow? Are you going to follow Sodom, or are you going to follow Christ?
And folks, buy yourselves some really good safes, because that's where you're going to have to lock your Bible up if you want to hang on to it.
Yeah, it'll be contraband. Has
anti-homophobic
propaganda.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, it'll be considered hate speech.
Oh, hate speech, yeah.
You get the, Leviticus, so are you going to stone people? That's kind of the response. I said, homosexuals mention the New Testament too, and I bring it up, and I show them, and they go, oh, I didn't know that. And they're going to have to come up with a gotcha now for those. But
Romans chapter 1.
But it's like I explain to people, as a Bible-believing Christian, I believe this, but I don't believe it just because the Bible says so, but because I know in my heart and soul that it's a natural behavior, it's sinful, it has detrimental consequences on societies.
Detrimental consequences socially, physically, emotionally, psychologically. It serves no just in evolutionary terms. It serves no evolutionary purpose. It does not propagate the species. You can't reproduce that way. Let me
explain something to you, people out there that support the gay agenda. When it comes to the point where the government has complete control and starts dictating and they start killing old people because they're not good for society, homosexuals will also be killed because you can't produce more workers. You will also eventually be targeted. You may think that you're the favorite son of leftism right now, but down the road, you also will be targeted.
Well, I tend to think that marriage will be abolished entirely, and the state will have these huge factories where children are manufactured. Everyone will have to contribute their genetic material. There'll be mandatory sperm and ova banks, and the state. In other words, child conception and birthing and raising will be totally at the province of the state. The family will be outlawed, and at that point, a lot of this ceases to have any relevance. But I think that's where it's ultimately headed. Or at least that's what they'll try to do. They tried to do all this in the old Soviet Union, and we saw how that turned out. So, human nature is a lot more difficult to overcome than the left ever believes. They always believe they can change human nature, but they're human beings themselves. So it's human nature prevents them from changing human nature, but they always think they can. That's the thing about utopianists. And when they fail, that's why they inevitably become more and more authoritarian and dictatorial. Because they're just, if it doesn't work, well, it's got to be the fault of the other. It's got to be the fault of an enemy who's thwarting hard and virtuous efforts.
And if we silence them and eliminate them, why, everything will work perfectly.
Utopia.
Yeah, because eventually that big government that was necessary to get us here will fade away because everybody will agree. Right.
Sure it will. Because, of course, that's perfectly consistent with human nature. Let's see. What do we got here?
All right. Story number 5. More Clinton emails. And the headline is FBI recovers private emails from Clinton server, according to Bloomberg. So now, there's Yahoo News and Reuters that has put it out there. The FBI has recovered emails from a private server used by Hillary Clinton while Secretary of State that she said were deleted because they involve personal matters. Bloomberg reported on Tuesday, citing a source familiar with the investigation. The FBI is examining the server to see whether any information, including classified data, was mishandled. Now, we've already come across, more than just a few emails that were potentially classified. It was not clear how many of the personal emails have been recovered, the news agency said. This is just continuing this spiral, and we already told you years ago that Clinton was not going to be the candidate. With this going on, it's becoming it's being reported in the mainstream media. People don't trust her. People don't trust the Clintons overall.
Well, I mean, this
email is more evidence. This is more evidence that she thinks she's above the law. She's above everybody else. And for the most part, that's ticked off a lot of people.
Well, the nature of it is a constant daily drip, drip, drip. It's always in the press. Therefore, she's always going to be asked about it. She can try to, and she has. She's tried to talk about economic policy or healthcare policy or foreign policy or this or that or the other. She always has to come back to the emails. And people already don't trust anything she has to say with regard to Emailgate. In fact, you know where Emailgate, with what demographic Emailgate is hurting her the most? Women voters.
Yeah.
Women voters are deserting Hillary Clinton because they don't trust her. They don't believe a word she says. And, of course, we all know why nobody believes a word she says, because she's a terrible liar. She has no talent for hypnotizing people like her husband did. She can't distract people. And it's like I said from the beginning, the only way that Hillary Clinton can possibly win, even the Democrat nomination, is to put that 2.5 or however much it ends up being, $1 billion war chest to work, doing the thing it was always intended to do, an absolutely nuclear carpet bombing negative just the most disgusting, despicable, negative campaign in American political history to so disgust the electorate, drive down turnout so that she can win a base-on-base election. That's her only shot. That was always her only shot. And Emailgate is just drip, 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 drip. So even that might not work at this point. I mean, she's fallen behind Bernie Sanders in Iowa and New Hampshire. She's fallen behind Bernie Sanders nationally. I mean, and I'll guarantee you, I don't think really there are that many Democrats that are genuinely enthusiastic about weekend Bernie Sanders. But Democrats want to escape the Hillary trap. They don't want to go down with somebody that they don't like. I mean, a lot of so-called progressives, at least they can look at Bernie Sanders and know that he actually believes what he says. But
Right.
Mrs. Clinton, I mean, you have no idea. I mean, yeah, one time she was a Marxist-Leninist, but now, I mean, who knows? I mean, she's so burned her bridges behind her as far on the trust issue that I don't think anybody anywhere on the political spectrum trusts her anymore. And if you lose that, you better have you better have a magnetic personality to compensate or to distract from that character, that gaping character defect. And she doesn't have a magnetic personality by any stretch of the imagination.
As we move over to the next story, Ben Carson knows Islam, I'm going to hang up the phone and I'm going to call in by Skype. So you go ahead and introduce the next story, and then I'll be on in a moment.
Sounds good. In fact, this would be a good time for a promo.
Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs has come to KMET. Listen live Saturdays at 1 p.m. right here on KMET 1490 AM.
Top of the next hour, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, KMET 1490 AM.com. The same place on your AM radio dial in the Gibbs pocket of Southern California. For Constitution Radio, the third hour of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. Now, this one, story number 4, Ben Carson knows Islam. And I think it's almost as important, if not more important, to say that Ben Carson knows Islam and is willing to tell the truth about it. Be prepared for the real Holocaust, yeah. Because that really is the key. I mean, a candidate can know Islam, but if they're not willing to tell the truth about it, then what good is it?
Well, and the thing is, what I'm being told by a lot of the Republican establishment is, well, yeah, he's right technically, but you just can't say that.
Exactly.
Well, then we've given in. We've given in. And why can't we say it? Because the left and the Muslims have told us we can't.
Well, using the same Marxist-Leninist tactics of just demonization and name-calling and just bullying, intimidation. And it's amazing how easily so many Americans have been intimidated. I mean, where are the testicles? Is I guess the best way to ask the question. Where is the courage? Where's the stalwart? Where is the standing up and say, in the name of God, sir, do you have no decency? Just stand up and just say, look, this is the truth. And you may not want to hear it, but it's by God my right to say it, and you better listen to it because it is the truth. And that's what Ben Carson is saying. Now, it's even more effective when Ben Carson says it, because what is Ben Carson's reputation? Entirely well earned. He doesn't rant. He doesn't rave. He doesn't scream. He doesn't yell. He's not bombastic.
Yeah, not that we're naming anybody. Huh?
No, no, of course not. He's soft-spoken. He's reasonable. He's calm. He's cerebral. I mean, talk about a steady hand on the wheel of state. That will be Ben Carson. And Ben Carson, with that reputation, which is entirely well earned, as I just said a moment ago, and he comes out and he tells the truth about Islam, then you're going to be hard pressed to call him a wild-eyed Islamophobe, a Muslim hater. Because I mean, just listen to Ben Carson for 5 minutes, and you're going to realize how stupid that accusation sounds. Apparently,
well, the thing is when it comes to Islam, he gets it, and what we're talking about, folks, is from a interview, and the interview. In the interview on Meet the Press on NBC, they basically asked him about Islam in the White House. And I think they were trying to get him to say that Obama is a Muslim, and they actually did go that route later on, and we'll go into that in a second. But that's what began this. And he said, "Well, I would not approve of I would not support a Muslim in the White House." I don't remember the exact words, but he said something along those lines. And then he said something that's fascinating. Islam is not compatible with the U.S. Constitution.
Exactly.
Couldn't have said it better. Could not have said it better. And the Associated Press story I was reading about this, they said, well, he didn't offer any, anything to show that it's not compatible, like it was a gotcha or something. Well, it was easy. I mean, I just went through the basic principle of limited government and the first three amendments, and I showed incompatibility in my article. And that's just the first three amendments and that one concept. Because in Islam, the church is the government is the church, and it's all about Islam. And if you are not in support of Islam, you are either dead or you're a slave.
Yeah. Islam, Islamic countries are, by definition, theocracies. That's Islamic culture. That's how the Muslim world works. And in fact, now you might you might be saying, folks, well, what about Egypt under Gamal Abdel Nasser, or Iraq under Saddam Hussein, or Syria under the Assad clan? And remember that is why there's only two forms of government in the Muslim world: theocracies or dictatorships. Because dictatorships are what are required to suppress Islamic fundamentalists.
Yeah, to hold back the theocracy.
So you either have a dictatorship or you have a theocracy. Are either one of those things compatible with the United States Constitution? I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, Islam is about domination. There's no peaceful. Again, just like we talked about with the last story, 2 stories ago. With regard to the Lavender Lobby, there's no peaceful coexistence. There's no live and let live. There's no go along to get along. There's no tolerance. There's none of that. There's only domination, and that is completely inconsistent with the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution is what? The rule of law, not the rule of men, not the rule of Allah, but the rule of law.
Well, and Sharia on its face is incompatible because of the things that go along with it. And one of the examples is Second Amendment. In Muslim countries, if you're not a Muslim, you can't apply for a permit to carry a firearm. Well, if you're not Muslim, that's a religion, so that makes it the established church. That brings us back to the First Amendment. The Congress shall make no law establishing the church. So in respect to the establishment of religion, actually, is I think the way it's worded. Okay, so there you go. Well, if there's an established church in Islam and you can't speak out against it, well, there goes freedom of speech. I mean, and each and every one of our rights just topple like a line of dominoes in such a system. It's not compatible. And so when I say I don't want a Muslim in the White House, although we may already have one, I don't think that we have 2 Muslims in Congress, and I think we shouldn't have allowed them in Congress in the first place, throw their butts out. It is incompatible because this is not a religion. It is an invasive political ideology. Invasive. Allowing Muslims into our Congress and into the White House would be no different than if during World War II we a bunch of refugees from Germany that claim to be members of the Nazi Party to also enter our government.
decent analogy.
You're inviting the enemy to conquer you and to control you. This enemy wants to kill us. This enemy wants to destroy America. They are completely against everything we are for, and we are inviting them into our country as refugees, and we are inviting them into our government, and we're being called bigots and racist and everything else because, like Ben Carson, we dare to say, I don't want a Muslim in the White House. It would be disastrous. They are the enemy. Simple as that.
But look, he gave a very sound, cogent reason.
Yeah.
He didn't just say, I don't want Muslims. He didn't say, I don't want a Muslim, and I don't want those people in charge. He said, no. He said, I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation, and that the Islamic. Why? Because the Islamic faith is inconsistent with the Constitution. He said. He gave his position, and he gave a very logical and cogent reason for it.
Uh-huh.
And a very calm, reasonable, like Ben Carson always is, it's interesting. The biblical adage about a soft answer turneth away wrath. Well, that's one of the reasons I like Ben Carson. Precisely because he doesn't rant and rave. He doesn't.
Yeah, I mean.
Yell. He doesn't
Tom on Conservative Voice Radio is Ben Carson's #1 cheerleader here locally, and he thinks I'm anti-Ben Carson because I always say, well, there's no way Ben Carson can be president. And I like Ben Carson. He's a great man. I think he would do well in a cabinet position. Surgeon General comes to mind, but first of all, he doesn't have what it takes to become president. He doesn't have the support. He doesn't have the money, number one. Number two, if you dig deep enough, he doesn't fully understand the Second Amendment, and he has some ideas that are not, to use one of your terms that I was going to use earlier, cogent with the Second Amendment. Secondly, he has some ideas on amnesty that may not necessarily work well with Americans, especially since everybody's jumping on the Trump wants to build a wall wagon. Mm-hmm. And also, thirdly, because as a non-politician, he doesn't understand the process. He doesn't understand, he needs to be at every single event and that kind of thing, name recognition. He's just kind of going through the motions. I really don't think he's even taken this run seriously, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't like him. Just like when I talk about, the eligibility of the presidential capabilities of someone like Ted Cruz. It does not mean I don't like Ted Cruz, just like I don't dislike Ben Carson. It's just that they are not the right people, and they're not capable of it. They're just not capable of reaching that pinnacle. The problem is most of the people who are capable are rhinos. That's the fear.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it is. I mean, you have people that are ideologically suited, but not necessarily temperamentally suited. You have people that are temperamentally suited that aren't necessarily ideologically suited. The only candidate who met all those, getting back to story number 7, the only candidate that met all those criteria is now no longer in the race.
Right.
So,
that's a sad state of affairs. And then someone made a joke with me and they said, well, Doug, who do you think is the next person then? Because you're so good at picking winners. And they were being facetious with me. I said, hey, I didn't necessarily say I thought Scott Walker would win. I hoped he would. I'm a number cruncher. He was the best candidate. Because the money situation didn't agree doesn't mean that I can't pick winners. I'm not trying to pick a winner. This isn't a horse race, in my opinion. I'm trying to pick who's best. In my opinion, Scott Walker was best. That's why he was who I was supporting. But see, the problem is all this thinking it brings us around to this idea, and this actually kind of ties to the next story. We got to be thinking party. Yeah, but what's best for the party? Well, we can't talk about the social issues because, we might not be able to get elected. Matter of fact, we should eliminate them from our platform. I'm not going to change what I believe to get votes. We do what's right. We do what is constitutional.
Well, and change.
I'm not gonna jump behind Trump because I think he can win, or jump behind Bush because I think he can win. I'm going to jump behind whoever it is I get behind because I believe they're the right person for the job.
Well, and changing what you believe to get votes doesn't usually work for Republicans. Yeah. Okay, isn't that? I mean, there's a term for that, folks. It's called flip-flopping. I don't seem to recall that really helped Mitt Romney much 4 years ago. So, I mean, there used to be a term that Ronald Reagan used, or maybe it was Margaret Thatcher, one or the other, called conviction politician. And there's another term too. It's an acronym. It's called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get.
Right.
And why do you think, ladies and gentlemen, that Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were such tremendously successful politicians? Not just in terms of policy accomplishment, but in terms of winning elections. Because people knew what they stood for. They didn't change what they believed to win elections. They went out there, they said, I'm Ronald Reagan, or I'm Margaret Thatcher, and this is who I am. This is what I believe. They laid out their platform, and that's what they ran on. They didn't change for anybody. And you know what? They were very successful in drawing voters to them. That's what politics is supposed to be about. It's not about putting on a different the right mask in order to get that 50.1%. It's about going out there and saying, this is what I believe. This is why you should vote for me. If you don't, then God bless you. But and a lot of it is coming along at the right place at the right time too. But
sounds like you got a little bit of what I got. Just a little bit of a scratchy throat, kind of irritating, but you're not really necessarily ill.
Yeah, something like that. I've had it periodically I tend to get it more in the fall and winter. And then spring and summer is no problem. But the bottom line is flip-flopping, pandering is another term for it, and people can see that a mile away.
Right.
If you want to build, if you're a politician and if you're a Republican candidate and you have a GOP consultants telling you, oh, well, you got to take this position to appeal to this group, and you got to take this position to appeal to that group, they're telling you how to lose. They're telling you how to portray yourself as being a complete and utter phony. And if that's how you want to present yourself to the electorate, then I guess you can, but you're not going to win doing it. So, you better to be who you are, state what you believe, and let people make their own choice. And it's amazing that there is so little of that left in American politics. And then people wonder why politics is held in such ill repute. Oh, everybody's a phony. Nobody stands for anything anymore. Everybody's out for themselves. Well, here you go. This is what you get. It's like you can't demand the ends but deny the means. And that's why politicians like Ronald Reagan were so unique. He almost runs counter to the definition of the breed. Ronald Reagan, you could make the case, wasn't a politician precisely because he had convictions. Well,
all right. Well, the next story, and I think we can only start talking about it. We'll finish talking about it on KMET later on. Boehner quits, and this is just sudden. And some people are saying it has something to do with the Pope. He heard
allowing
something the Pope said.
Allowing
the Pope's
Pope?
Visit. Huh?
Allowing the Pope to speak before Congress?
I don't know if it's that or what was, or from what I'm understanding, it's something that the Pope has said Maybe he's realized, that he's a part of the problem. I don't know. He really hasn't been clear.
Well, Boehner is Catholic.
Yeah, he hasn't really. Well, yeah, but if he's got any Republican bones left in his body, he's got to recognize that this Jesuit Marxist is not a Catholic.
Well, it may have something to do with allowing Pope Francis to speak before Congress, which he didn't have to do. He and McConnell didn't have to let Francis give that speech the other day.
Right.
So, because you knew what he was going to say. You knew he was going to talk about climate change, and you knew he was going to. It was like a State of the Union address with robes and a funny hat. So I mean, you knew what you were going to get, and why would you bring somebody? I don't care who he is. Oh, he's the Pope. So what? I mean, you know what you're going to get. He spent the whole time pandering to the Democrats, telling them everything they wanted to hear, and the Republicans had to feign, polite applause. I mean, it was not a situation. I don't know. Maybe Boehner felt like he didn't have any other choice. I tend to think that he just finally got sick and tired of herding cats, which is what managing the House GOP conference or caucus is really like. And maybe he just used Francis's visit as his opportunity to bow out. And that's what it smells like to me. But
now, one of the stories I've been wanting to talk about, and I didn't have it written about it, and I didn't put it on the list, but I want to throw it out there real quick too. And it's something that you and I need to write about on Political Pistachio. Is this thing that has emerged about the molestation of boys in Afghanistan, and how American troops intervened in some of these situations and were released from duty for daring to get into a conflict with the cultural norm of the area.
In other words, they were Islamophobes for stopping child molestation.
Pretty much.
Of course.
I don't know if you've seen that out there, but I think it's definitely something you and I need to be talking about and writing about. So, folks, tune in next week, and I'm sure we'll be talking in more depth about that particular situation.
Yeah, I'll put on my hip waders.
All right, we're almost out of time here. We're going to Constitution Radio on KMET 1490 AM next. Tune in at KMET1490am.com. And, after missing a couple weeks due to being preempted by exciting University of Redlands football, we are back for a couple weeks, and then we'll be preempted again, and then we'll be back again after that.
Yeah, kind of like the way the football schedule works, folks.
Yeah.
You're home some, and then you're on the road, and then you're home, and then you're on the road.
Well, and this is all the more reason why by next year we need to be 5 day a week while football's not on the air, Monday through Friday.
Amen, brother. Amen.
All right, and that said, any final comments before we go to KMET next?
Just that it's over at KMET1490am.com. Constitution Radio is next. The third hour, the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. Follow us over there. Join us. The third hour begins in mere moments.
Our records indicate that you've been lied to. Listen to the truth. Constitution Radio with Douglas B. Gibbs, Saturdays at 1 p.m. on KMET.
No pesticides, no animal products, no fillers, sweeteners, or artificial anything.
Why do I have so much energy? Why?
Visit us at TexasSuperfood52.com today to get started on your path to the healthiest version of you. Available only at TexasSuperfood52.com.
The father of Bella Bond, the recently identified Massachusetts toddler whose body was found in a trash bag on a beach 9 months ago, now wonders if the child's mother had something to do with her death.
She lied to me before. She's lying again.
Joe Amoroso joining dozens for a vigil last night. Rochelle Blonde charged with accessory to murder her boyfriend with murder. Addition to the dress code at 2 high schools in Worcester, Massachusetts, getting an F from students.
The policy banning hoodies in school was announced just a couple of days before the school year began at Burncoat and South High Community Schools. The school district safety officer says it's part of an effort to prevent violence. He cited a connection between hooded sweatshirts and gang culture. But the kids say everybody wears them.
It's cold and the hoodie's comfortable and that's it.
Students from both schools circulated petitions calling on administrators to throw out the rule. The school board could make the final decision. Joan Bennett, ABC News.
A life-size sculpture of the youngest victim of the Boston Marathon bombings was unveiled at Bridgewater University in Massachusetts today. 8-year-old Martin Richard was one of 3 people killed in the 2013 bombings. His sister Jane, who lost a leg, sang with the church youth choir during the ceremony today. The mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, and Martin's father were among the speakers. This is ABC News.
Blanchard & Company would like to offer their listeners 10 1921 silver Morgan dollars for only $26 each, including free shipping when you pay with a credit card. Silver Morgan dollars are America's most popular coin, and now you can own 10 historic 1921 silver Morgan dollars for only $26 each. Call Blanchard now to own your piece of history. 800-210-1225. Supplies are limited, so call now. 800-210-1225.
Daria Albinger, ABC News.
We're the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party, and we're active in your area. Check us out on Conservative Voice Radio Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on this same station, 1490. Join us for one of our weekly meetings, Tuesdays at 8 a.m. and the second Thursday of each month, 6 p.m. at the Farmhouse Restaurant in Banning. Or call us at 1-800-350-2637, extension 912.
Welcome, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. I don't know, I feel like Rip Van Winkle or something. You know, it's been a few weeks since we've been on the air.
3 to be precise.
Yeah, my beard's a little longer. You look like your beard's a little longer. Welcome to the program. If you want to watch us do the program, you can go to KMET1490am.com, hit the KMET TV button. You can also go to KMET1490am.com to listen to the program online or right here on the 1490 AM airwave. And it's nice to be back. A lot of things have happened since we've been gone. Now, we really weren't gone completely. There's a second program called American Daily Review, which begins at 11 a.m. every Saturday. The first in it basically is the first 2 hours of our 3-hour Saturday extravaganza, as Jasmius would put it. And so what we did is we just did 3 hours on American Daily Review while exciting University of Redlands football was playing here on KMET. But it is nice to be back. I'm excited to talk to you folks. We have a good guest on. In the wings waiting. The moment she is with us, Sean, the engineer, let me know. Meanwhile, up there in the state of Washington, wearing his football colors of the Seattle
Seahawks.
Yeah, Seahags. He's got a jersey and a hat on. I'm not wearing my colors, but I feel like I should proudly. And to my right, always to my right, Alex Ferguson, the Poet Laureate of Constitution Radio. And I've had a chance to see you. You went up to L.A. with me, and that was a pretty good event in the sense of the response of the people that were there.
That was a ball. I very much enjoyed it, and I was most impressed with the talk that you gave.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I am Mr. Constitution, that Constitution guy, or America's Constitution Authority. Pick one, pick a couple, pick all three. That's good. And
I'll be on bumper stickers.
Yeah, soon to be on all the bumper stickers in America. Okay, thank you. And I have been a busy pup. Politicalpistachio.com. I've been writing a little bit here and there on the site. Jasmia's up there in Washington. You haven't been able to write quite this week. And, it's funny because as your number of posts went down, I also watched the statistics number of hits go down. So welcome back. Start writing. We need the hits. Okay, and it's good to see you. So you survived moving dad.
I survived moving dad. It was close there for a while, but and now you know what it takes to pull me off of politicalpistachio.com and the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific at blogtalkradio.com/HSR network.
Yeah. Now here's something that's interesting that happened to me. I'm also the publisher of Tabletop News out here in this area, and so I deliver it and I visit the locations. And so one of the locations is a bowling alley, and so as I'm approaching the bowling alley, school's letting out, and there's a middle school and a high school in the area. And I know this is the next generation, not quite the millennials. They're basically the millennials plus one or something like that. But and actually, I think they're even more difficult than even the millennials. But nonetheless, so I'm pulling into this parking lot, and it's like a driveway roadway going towards where the parking spaces are. And school's let out, and this one particular kid, and he looks like he's probably high school age, and his friends, they're walking, and they come through the bushes, and they step over the curb, and they walk almost right in front of my car. They're looking at me. They know I'm coming. I got to slam my brakes, keep from hitting them. And the woman screams at me, "I'm a pedestrian. What the hell's your problem?" And then, well, except for he used another word other than hell. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what a. Yeah. Yeah. It just this. Now I remember when I was a kid. In the older generation, they thought we were nuts. You remember Breakfast Club, right? And the principal and the jandar's talking, and the principal says, "Jandar, you know what keeps me lying awake at night is that these people are going to be the ones that take care of us in our old age." And the janitor says, "Oh, don't what do you say? Don't bet on it." So I get it. The older generation looks at the younger generation. Younger generation is a little nuts. Okay, I get that. But but the millennial generation is fascinating because they're almost like what is it? The Wall Street, occupied at Wall Street people. They kind of in that mentality. Mm-hmm. And they're sick of what's going on. They're sick of the politicians. They're sick of, and then they're angry with Obama, and even though a lot of them voted for him. But just because they're angry with the left, it does not mean that they belong to us. We got to go get them. And I've always said the way to get the millennials is to convince them that they've been lied to. Once they realize they've been lied to, we can get them. Problem is, they think we're lying to them too. So you got to convince them they've been lied to and that we're telling the truth. And we've got, a variety of generations right here on this radio program. I mean, Alex, fought in Vietnam. You and I are about the same age, 21. And no.
Yeah, I certainly feel like 21.
Yeah, it's like I tell people. I just, I celebrated not too long ago my 29th consecutive 21st birthday. But but and so we look at this kind of from different angles based on our generation and our expectations and our environment and our what we've experienced in our lifetime. And before I bring on the guest, because I know you've been listening to me, Alex. Alex is our resident oldster here. He's got it all figured out. So I need to ask him while he still knows everything. Oh, wait a second. That's what I said to my daughter when she was.
You never do any better than Eddie Lamar.
Yeah, all right.
Lamar, I'll tell you that. She was a
He's just
woman.
testing. He's just testing my mood to see if I'll put up with this Gabby Hayes stuff. I said.
Myrna Loy was some chick too.
Yeah. All right, Alex. In your normal voice, wouldn't it be frightening if that was his normal voice? In your normal voice, what do you think about what I just said?
Huh?
Oh, gee. Yeah, well, okay. And good cough button there, Jasmine. I saw that. What do you think about this, the millennials, the 20-somethings, and really the early 30-somethings?
Because I have younger children than I ought to have since I got married late. I've got like a high school student and a college student and a graduate student in my family.
Okay.
And what I find is that they have, number one, been brainwashed by the school system to be leftist zealots.
Okay.
The one that hasn't is into motorcycles and mechanics and engineering, and so he doesn't pay any attention to that stuff.
Okay.
But the other thing is that they are woefully ignorant of history.
Right.
History starts the day they were born. Anything that happened, literally they'll say to you, well, that's some old dead guy, isn't it?
Right.
So it's so hard to teach. You're supposed to learn from the lessons of history. They have a blank slate.
Well, then the saying goes: those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. They can't. They're not even forgetting history. They're basically trying to reinvent the wheel.
For them, none of it exists. And when you talk about the evils of socialism and communism, they go glassy-eyed. They have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, those are just big words, and they say, okay, great, and then they go back to their phone and they start texting their buddy. And this is they call it the me generation. They call it the Y generation. I don't know what they got all these terms. Yeah. I call them the technology generation because this generation does not know life before the technology. They don't remember what you and I remember. And all they know is technology. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm going to lean towards it's probably not in their best interest in many ways, but they have access to all this information. And the old saying, well, if it's on the internet, it must be true.
Much of what we're talking about, though, is our fault.
Oh, absolutely.
That's because we allowed the left to take control of the means of communication. They have control of the school. I've said it 1,000 times. They've got control of movies and all that stuff. We've got rich conservatives who should have been developing, funding, and presenting movies that show our side of the story the way we were, for instance, with Streisand and Redford, showed their side.
And remember, for me, it's not necessarily as much about red versus blue, right versus left, conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat. For me, it's all about the Constitution, the rule of law. And the Constitution has limiting principles in it. And I've talked to youngsters about the Constitution, and most of them, if they know anything about the Constitution, they think that the Constitution is the preamble and the Bill of Rights. The rest of it doesn't exist to them, first of all. Second of all, most of when I say Constitution, they think I'm talking about how the food is moving through their body or something. It's not something that affects them, and so they really don't care. Right. And also, it's too complicated, it's too complex. This is a generation that wants it quick and at their fingertips, and when they decide they want to look at it, and when they decide to read it. And so it's like cable TV. Cable TV is on its way out because everybody's got Netflix and all that. That's this generation. And before you say anything, Alex, I want to bring on Katie. She's been waiting patiently for us to get her on the program. Katie, I'm assuming you've heard all of what we've said, and we probably sound like a broken record in many sense because our generation, the older generation, kind of feels that way, along the lines of kind of what we have said. And you're younger, you're more in tune with the millennial generation. You've written a book about all of this. And so, Katie Kiefer, KatieKiefer.com, what is your opinion based on what we just said?
Well, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to speak
welcome.
with you, and I'm glad that you're speaking about the millennial generation. We're 95 million strong, and for the past 2 elections, the majority of us have voted for, of course, the Democrats. But I have a lot of hope because the latest Harvard research shows that millennials have lost a historic level of trust in the government, particularly in the office of president. And so you won't see millennials as excited about voting this time around as they were in 2008 when they were just ecstatic about getting involved. But they've stepped back and they've realized that they have been duped. They don't know all of the history, and that's what I'm trying to get out there. We have to educate them. You're right, this is a very technology-oriented generation. So getting the message out there on Facebook and Twitter and also other platforms where they'll find them is effective. For example, I had one young man who was in his 20s, African-American, who used to work for Barack Obama, and he said that he discovered this book, but that's just part of it, of course, but he discovered the message that I have in my book, which is titled Let Me Be Clear, and he said now he's a conservative and he has some hope. So the more people that we can educate, the more we'll be able to get our country back on track.
Am I right that the way to get to the millennials is to convince them that they've been lied to?
Well, if you can convince them probably without maybe just, that's the first thing that you come out and say, because we do have to remember that they think more positively of Democrats than Republicans, despite the fact they have lost trust in everyone across the board. Millennials still do think more positively of Democrats. So,
well, yeah, because the left has convinced society. They've done a very good job of basically telling everybody, yeah, the Republicans, they're evil, they're racist, they're bigoted, they're this, they're that. And people will vote for a lying, incompetent Democrat over someone who's evil any day of the week.
Yeah, it's branding. That's what they call it in politics.
But there is hope because a lot of research from Pew to Gallup indicates that millennials are a very pragmatic generation. So this is a generation that puts a high premium on transparency. And that was one reason why they voted in such high numbers for Barack Obama in 2008, because he marketed himself as being very transparent. Now they're feeling like, well, this is just a big house of cards. So the more that Republicans can be transparent, the more they will appeal to millennials, the more they can show them facts. I've spoken with, for example, people in the oil industry in Colorado, one of the presidents of the biggest oil and gas and electric associations out there, and she says that she has really found a lot of success touching millennials when she's able to just say, here are the facts. There are some good things, for example, about solar, but we can't just completely rely on solar. We can't just completely rely on wind. So she's found that that's a very effective tactic, if you will, with resonating.
Katie Kiefer's book is Let Me Be Clear. We're going to talk about the book and her visit out to Temecula next Friday, where she's going to be speaking at the Murrieta Temecula Republican Assembly dinner meeting next Friday. We will be talking about all of that after this break. Don't go anywhere.
What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Our records indicate you've been lied to. Welcome to the truth. Douglas V. Gibbs.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Help me fight the good fight. This radio program is funded by advertising dollars. So, if you are a business, add Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs to your business portfolio. If you are a listener, become a patron of the business's advertising on this program. Without advertising, your weekend dose of truth ends. With more advertising, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs grows, and we will be on the way to win the battle to restore the Republic. To learn more, email us at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com or visit douglasvgibbs.com.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
I am America's Constitution Authority. This is Douglas V. Gibbs on Constitution Radio, KMET 1490 AM. Great having you along for the ride. If you missed part of the show, you can check out the podcast later at KMET1490am.com. Check out more about yours truly and my cast of characters that surround me at douglasvgibbs.com. If you look down for the location where it talks about the team, TEAM, there's where you can find out a little bit more about Alex and Jasmius as well, who are joining me on this program. And you know who else is joining us? And she's, matter of fact, I was checking her out on Fox News. Katie Kiefer, and this young lady has really caught people's attention because she's giving a clear message about the way to capture the millennial generation for the Republican Party, for the right, for the conservatives, and in my case, for constitutionalism. And I'm excited to have her on the program with us, and she will be also, for those of you who are local and here in the Inland Empire, she will be speaking at the Murrieta Temecula Republican Assembly on October 2nd. You can learn more. Go to mtra.club, C-L-U-B, MTRA, that's for Murrieta Temecula Republican Assembly, Murrieta Temecula Republican Assembly, MTRA.club. Learn more about Katie Kiefer's opportunity to speak to the Republicans of Southwest Riverside County at that meeting. Katie, it's such a pleasure to have you on. Excited. Now, your book, I don't have it yet. I decided I wasn't going to get it. I wasn't going to read it. I'm talking to you completely off of what little I know about you, because I want to buy an autographed copy on Friday.
Oh, you're doing it the right way then.
Yeah, you got to do it the right way.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
looking
excited
so forward
to
to
meeting
meet
you. I really
Yeah,
am, because you have done some
on.
great work in getting this message out. But tell me a little bit about the book. Let me be clear. What's the quick elevator pitch about the book?
Sure. Well, as you may be able to figure out, let me be clear is, of course, the catchphrase that Barack Obama uses most frequently. Time Magazine did an analysis, and that was the catchphrase that he used more often than any other to sell his lies, essentially. And I know you guys are talking about his lies, but he would say, let me be clear. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. And what
that's
I
basically
do
saying, hey, I'm telling you the
book,
truth. You just, let me say it in simple terms.
Notice he took the word perfectly out of it?
Yeah. So what I do is, as a millennial myself, I have a lot of millennial friends who are, of course, working minimum wage jobs. They have master's degrees, law degrees.
Yeah.
They can't find jobs.
Yeah, my
other
wife
than...
with her bachelor's in psychology totally understands. She's working retail.
Well, no, the millennial generation is the most educated, at least in terms of degrees, generation in the history of this country. But they're the first generation of Americans to financially and also, you could argue on many cultural levels, to do worse than their parents. And that angers me, really. And it angers many parents who want nothing more for their children than for them to do better, to have more opportunities than they themselves had. And it's also time right now when many baby boomers would like to be enjoying their retirement, all their hard work, but instead they have 27 and even a lot of young 30-year-olds are forced to live at home, which I call the new shacking up in my book. So what I do is I really lay out everything from the economy to foreign policy and talk about the troops and the veterans. And I also talk about cultural issues, the importance of fathers, and how we have a historic level of millennial women who are raising children without fathers right now, and talk about the impacts of that and offer solutions. And in each chapter, what I do in order to resonate with the millennials is I compare Barack Obama's policies to those of John F. Kennedy and Bill Clinton. So I don't compare, compare Obama to Reagan or other Republicans. I compare apples to apples so that these young people who are too young, they weren't even alive, for example, when John F. Kennedy was president, can see that Barack Obama and also Hillary Clinton, who is deeply woven into this book, their policies are radical. They are
they're even foreign to what Democrats used to be. And it's like what Reagan said, I didn't leave the Democrat Party, the Democrat Party left me.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. And that is the message that you can see through this book. You can see that if you are a Democrat, you can stay a Democrat if you really want to, but you have to figure out a way to do that without voting for people like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, because they don't align with what you think. Most people have another thing that I do in this book is for people who aren't millennials, to learn how to talk to them. For example, there's a lot of misconceptions about what millennials think. A lot of people think that they're more liberal than they are, when in fact they're actually socially libertarian and fiscally very conservative. So, and I have a lot of research in this book that backs that all up too. And then so that people can feel like there's hope and solutions, I have one thing that I did is I spent a long time interviewing close to 300 doctors and surgeons, and I specifically asked them to provide me with alternative ways that we can improve healthcare and do it in a free market way, so we can provide for all those people, whether they have pre-existing conditions or not, and do it in a free market manner. And also, I use my business experience and research to empower young people who are looking for hope and they want to become an entrepreneur. The one thing that is so great about this generation is it's so entrepreneurial. 70% say that they aspire to become an entrepreneur one day. So the last chapter, I really, it's called Roaring Muscle Cars, and I encourage young people to go out there and achieve the American dream, to run for political office if they want to. We've had enough of people like Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, and finally Boehner is getting out. But it's time for some fresh blood. So I encourage millennials, you can step up to the plate too. So it offers a history lesson, but also solutions.
One of the things that I've noticed with this generation is when it comes to their opinion of Obama, the word that probably best fits their opinion is betrayal. They feel betrayed because they were told that hope was right around the corner. There was this great change on the way, and then it turns out that this guy was not only just another politician, but he was something worse. And so there's a certain level of betrayal that they feel. How can the Republican Party capitalize on that feeling of betrayal?
Well, it is important, as I think we touched on just briefly before the break, to emphasize transparency. And that's why you see millennials aligning with candidates like Carson and Trump, and that
the non-politicians is
the
who
non-politicians are really gaining traction, not just across the board, but also with millennials. For many months, Carson has been polling very well with millennials, and that's because they don't trust politicians. So it's important for people like you, for average people, to get out there and talk to millennials. You actually have the most powerful voice, and that's one thing I'm trying to do, is empower just average people to connect with millennials. And parents in particular have a very powerful voice when it comes to this generation. This is probably one of the first generations in the history of this country that has such a close relationship with their parents. And I will be talking about that in my speech that I'm giving this coming Friday in Temecula. I'll be talking about that special connection that parents have with millennials and how you're probably the most powerful influencers in their life.
Well, I do the radio program. Actually, I have 2 radio programs here on KMET, and then I have a couple that I do online. I teach Constitution classes. I'm a public speaker. I go to a lot of events, and what I notice is almost all of the people that flock to hear me speak are the gray hairs. They're older than I am, and I got 6 grandkids. And the younger generation is just not interested in the Constitution, or maybe they are, but they don't have time for it, or they don't think it's that big of a deal. So my first question of 2 is, have you noticed the same trend in your public speaking, that it tends to be the gray hairs that want to hear what you have to say? And number 2, how do we encourage the younger generation to come to hear speakers like myself or you or any of the other people that are talking about for lack of a better word, the restoration of a American republic that's closer to what the Constitution wants, rather than what we see from these far left Democrats?
Well, I would encourage parents, again, to invite their children to come along, because there may not be very many millennials listening to you and I talk right now, but I bet there are a lot of parents and grandparents. And I would encourage them to invite their grandchild or their young, it could even be a neighbor or a niece or a nephew if you don't have children. Invite them to come along with you. When I was growing up, I had many mentors in my life. Many of them I reached out to myself. I talk about this in my book as well. Some of them I reached out to on my own. And young people really like mentors. And I'll be talking about that as well in my speech. So if you can take on that role as a mentor for a young person and invite them to attend an event, we'll start seeing more young people attend. But when I speak, sometimes I feel like maybe the baby boomers could do a better job, for example, of mentoring sometimes. And I know they are very busy, but if you just invited one person to come and you said, hey, I'll cover your $10 fee or your $20 fee or whatever, we would start seeing more young people, because they need that invitation to come from someone they view as a mentor.
Friday, you'll be in Temecula at the Marriott Temecula Republican Assembly there at the Temecula City Hall Conference Room. At 6 o'clock is when check-in is. And by the way, for those of you who are thinking about going, it's also advertised in Tabletop News, my local publication. Mention Tabletop News, they'll give you $5 off at the door. Be sure you RSVP. You can go to mtra.club, find out more about this great meeting that we're going to have next Friday. But is this your first time to the Temecula area?
Yes, I've been out to California before, but never to Temecula, so I'm really excited to meet everyone and see everything. I'll be signing copies of my book, which I believe are available at the Temecula Barnes & Noble, so people can pick it up there and bring it, and then I will sign it. Or they can, if you're a Prime member, you could go online and order Let Me Be Clear that way, and it would probably arrive in one day. But it should be a really fun event, and I look forward to meeting everyone.
So you said you've been to California before. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay,
Right.
that's a beautiful part of the country. I haven't been to Minnesota since 1984, long before you were a thought, I'm sure. Now, gentlemen, as before we let her go, because I know I've kind of dominated the questions here. Jasmius up in the state of Washington, Alex to my right. Let's go with Jasmius first. Do you have any questions or comments for Katie Kiefer?
Well, one thing I've noticed in terms of they always used to talk about the generation gap, and you can tell me since you're a young person, you can maybe you provide your perspective on it, because I know when I was a kid, we were raised to respect our elders, and it's just, we were talking about it before you came on, about how you don't tend to see that as much anymore in the younger generation, and that may reflect itself in things like Occupy Wall Street and such. Well, what's your perspective?
And in a sense, it's a kind of a narcissistic generation in many ways, isn't it, Jasmius?
Yeah. What's your perspective on that?
Well, that is somewhat true, but also somewhat of a misconception. Each generation of Americans in the history of this country, you could argue, was selfish to some degree. Why do we have so much debt that we have now? That's not due to the millennials, of course. And
well said.
Each generation has had its strengths and has had its weaknesses. And part of the problem with the millennials, sometimes you'll go to a restaurant and they'll be just completely engrossed in their phone, and you feel like, oh, is that a little robot over there, or is that a person? Part of the reason for that is their parents' fault, really. And so I encourage parents to say, you know what, kids, we're not going to sit around and look at our phones today. We're going to go outside and we're going to go biking together. So that's one thing that I do in this book, and when I talk, is encourage families to spend more time together. And usually it's actually the parents, especially depending on the age. Millennials are getting a little bit older, but for Generation Z coming up behind them, the parents really do have the greatest amount of ability to say, hey guys, we're going to go do something together as a family. And parents as well need to put their phone aside. So that's something we're all in this together. One positive thing that has come out of this horrific economic situation that we have is that what I call is the new shacking up, where we have over a third of millennials who have been living at home with their parents against both their will and their parents' will. Now, that's not exactly a positive thing economically, but in terms of the bond that is created between millennials and their parents, it's very strong, and there's new research out that shows that, I think it was on TV that did it, that found that when millennials were asked, who is your best friend and who do you trust the most, the majority of both millennial men and millennial women said it was one of their parents. And
that's
so
great.
I think that's actually really great. So you do actually, as a parent, have a strong influence with these young people, and they're not as bad as maybe they come across as.
Yeah, well, I can kind of relate. My son is 30, my daughter's 24. Each of them have 3 kids, and my son, him and his wife and 3 kids ran into some economic roughities lately, and so they're in my house right now. So rather than the usual just my wife and I, just the 2 of us, without the noise and all that, we've got now 7 people in the house because these 5 other people have moved in. But it's actually done wonders for my relationship with my son and my grandchildren and even my daughter-in-law. So there is something to what you just said, absolutely. Alex, any questions or comments for Katie Kiefer?
Well, yeah, I'm more of a comment guy than a question guy, and my comment is that I watched in the 60s and 70s the old leftists from the 30s take over the colleges that I was in, and they led a movement they created like a stampede of young people who were attacking the system. They were attacking the conservatives. And what happened was that those people who were conservative, they gave up. They decided not to become academics. They decided not to become ministers and such. They went into business, and they left the field to the opposition. So it seems to me that you know, and this it's kind of like saying, yeah, I got a great cure for insomnia. Get plenty of sleep. But what I'm saying is that we need to figure out how to encourage people to stay in the academic world and fight. Now, of course, the students are in a position of being blackmailed by grades, but there are things that they can do. You know, they can, for instance, they can record their professors, and and just turn in the tapes to talk shows or whatever. They can join groups on campus, but it's you know, it didn't happen. I don't think it happened spontaneously in the 60s and the 70s, and it's not going to happen spontaneously without some old hands helping them along.
Well, you know, something we've been working on locally here is I've been in touch with young Republicans here in Southern California. Came up with this idea, and a couple of these folks are like my idea, want to work with me on this, is start getting these Constitution clubs on the campuses of high schools and colleges. I asked young Republicans, do you have any clubs on any of these campuses? Well, no. Well, why not? And so my final question is, Katie Kiefer, and by the way, for those of you who want to find her online, that's Katie, K-A-T-I-E, Kiefer, K-I-E-F-F-E-R.com. So my final question is, are things like clubs getting on the campuses, is that a good strategy? Is that something that you would think may be a way of getting to the millennial generation?
Oh, yeah, definitely, and I have firsthand experience with that. When I was a student at the University of St. Thomas, which is a very liberal in terms of the administration campus.
And you survived.
I started, a independent newspaper there, and we actually went up again. It was a huge fight. It got national recognition just to bring a conservative speaker who happened to be Ann Coulter at the time to campus. And it was a really great learning experience for me, because you learn as a student going through that process to never apologize for what you believe, and you learn that you have to play by the school's rules and to do everything, of course, with great professionalism, which is a mistake that I've seen some students make, is to get a little bit, to basically bring themselves down to the level of their detractors. But if you can keep a high level of professionalism, if you can play by all the school's rules, you can actually make a huge difference on your campus and give those students who at one point never had a voice. And so the movement really does have to come from the students themselves, and it's challenging on a campus because if you start out as a freshman leader, you're only there for 4 years. So your senior year, you do have to spend a lot of time, of course, getting someone else to take over for you. So that is one challenge with campuses, is there's so much turnover, but there's a lot of really great students out there. It's great that you're working with the local Republican leaders, and it only takes a handful. When on my campus, we had maybe between 5 and 10 who were extremely active all the time, and we were able to mobilize a lot of other students within the campus. So it only takes a few, and to have perseverance and to do it and to work together. And if you can be mentors to some of those young people and to coach them along, that will be very, very powerful.
Katie Kiefer will be in Temecula on Friday at the MTRA meeting there at the Temecula City Hall Conference Room. Learn more, mtra.club. mtra.club club. Katie Kiefer, final words before you head on your way.
Well, just never give up hope, and also always persevere, and speaking the truth and fighting for freedom. I firmly believe that we are all alive at this moment for a certain reason. We all have certain talents that are best used for a certain reason. So just always keep that in mind if you're ever discouraged.
And I love the optimism. Thank you, Katie, for being on the program. Constitution Radio, KMET 1490 AM. We will be right back after this break.
Thank you for having me
We're the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party, and we're active in your area. Check us out on Conservative Voice Radio Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on this same station, 1490. Join us for one of our weekly meetings Tuesdays at 8 a.m. and the second Thursday of each month, 6 p.m. at the Farmhouse Restaurant in Banning. Or call us at 1-800-350-2637, extension 912.
Hey, do you know about the USA? Do you know about the government? Can you tell me about the Constitution? Hey, learn about the USA.
The Constitution is the instruction booklet for taking back the country. Douglas V. Gibbs.
1787, I'm told our founding fathers did agree to write a list of principles for keeping people free. The USA was just starting out.
You got a dent in your door, a scratch in your fender, or a scratch in your door and a dent in your fender. If you need auto detailing, if you need fire shooting decals on the side of your car, if you need a rally stripe right down the middle of your hardtop, I don't care what it is. The Patriots at All-Star Collision are the place you want to go. They're the only place to go. 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Web address allstarci.com to see all that they do and what they're all about. Phone number 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision, the kings of rock and roll.
Welcome back to Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. One thing I could say is this young lady's making an impact. She's been on Fox News. Now she's been on Constitution Radio. You know, that's one place to make an impact. And for those of you who want to learn more about her, KatieKiefer.com, KatieKieffer.com. All right, we've got a couple stories to talk about. We've got a book of the week, and I mean, we are woefully short on time, so I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, Alex, to just hold off on book of the week because we still got two stories to talk about, and she went a little long, but it's okay. It wasn't her fault. It was my fault. But she was so, as you put it, Jasmine, off mic, very articulate, enjoyable to listen to, real sharp young lady. And
I think what she had to say was terribly important.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Willing to sacrifice book of the week for what she had to say, for sure. Oh, absolutely. All right, but before we get rolling, on American Daily Review, that's blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. Jasmine and I went through 8 stories, 8, 7, 6, 5, and 4, and then ended with 3. We said a few things about Boehner quitting. That's right, he's going to quit. Everybody keeps wanting him to be thrown out of being speaker. Well, now he's just going to do it himself. For some reason, a cartoon, where the guy grabs himself by the collar, picks himself up, and throws himself out the door came to mind. But what is your thoughts, Alex, about Boehner's not dismissal, but decision to dismiss himself?
I think he saw the handwriting on the wall. The conservatives are massing for action. And I think this time they would have gotten rid of him, and he's a guy that now he's going to go into. I understand he's got some cushy job that's going to pay him big money.
Some cushy job.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. He's going to be a lobbyist or a consultant. You know how the game works.
I can see by the look in your face, Jasmine, and your hand gestures, you're not necessarily fully on board with what Alex is saying.
I don't. There have been so many so-called coup attempts over the last 4.5 years against Boehner. I don't think this one would have worked either, because the House conservatives, House Tea Partiers, they can never get organized. They don't don't unify behind a candidate that can actually win. They don't prepare in advance. So I mean, I don't think Boehner was going to get sacked. I think this is a long time coming. I think Boehner just got tired of herding cats. That's what leading the House Republican conference was like. It was like you can't. The two wings wouldn't cooperate with each other. If you pander to the conservative wing, then the establishment wing wouldn't cooperate, and vice versa. I think he just finally had enough of it. That's what I think.
So in other words, so what you're saying is he was sort of like the British in the American Revolution. We didn't really win. They just threw their hands up and were tired of the ridiculous fight and getting pop-shotted at from behind trees and so.
No, it's like I said for 4.5 years. He was facing the Democrats in front of him. At the same time, he had to keep knives out of his back from his own side, his own line, so to speak.
All right, story number 2, the Pope in America. We are all Catholic now except for the Pope. He's not Catholic. That's the way I see it. The guy's a Jesuit Marxist, and as a matter of fact, the last time we were on the air, Alex kind of clued us in a little bit about the Jesuits of Central and South America, and he fits right in with that group, doesn't he?
Well, I just did some research on that, and I knew I had seen something recently. The Sandinista Communist Party in Nicaragua was made up of, I think, it included 3 active priests. Miguel Diaz-Godo was one of the worst of them. He was taken out of the priesthood by the Pope for political activity for like 29 years or something like that. This Pope reinstated him. He didn't reinstate him because he gave up on his communist principles. He reinstated him because they won.
That's perfect.
It's enough to make you want to retch.
Now we've got various listeners. Excuse me. I tell you, there's some type of fall bug going around.
Well, don't kiss me.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on it, but there's a. Jeez Louise. Got a few people listening and commenting on Facebook, and I really have been ignoring them because I was so busy with Katie. But Norm and Chris are listening and leaving messages on Facebook, and Chris up north, she's doing things around the house and all that jazz while she listens, and it's funny because Norm, who's listening, says, "Are you on the radio now? Found it. Listening now. Bookmarked it." I think we have a listener now for life. So welcome to the show, Norm. Now, with all of this going on and the Pope in America, it's kind of frustrating because this Pope is basically I've got a title for a post I haven't written yet, and it's titled Obama. Let's see, the Pope, Obama in a robe.
And a funny hat.
It's absolutely incredible the stuff this Pope is saying, and it's right in line with the leftist agenda.
Sure.
And you know what? The Great Commission and saving souls is not number one on his list. It turns out global warming is.
I wouldn't say it's on his list at all. Well, I mean, he may pay lip service to it, but he's talking about climate change. He's running down capitalism, and it's the Marxist gospel.
Liberation theology has been doing battle to take over the church since before John Paul II. He's the last real anti-communist pope.
Coming from Poland, that kind of
it's the same liberation theology that Obama attended in his church in Chicago. That was called black liberation theology. You can call it black, you can call it purple, but it still comes out to be communism, and that's what they believe in. And I'm sorry, I'll tell you the truth. When this child molestation priest scandal came out, I was greatly offended. But when I found out that the church hierarchy had defended those people and attacked the accusers, and still, this Pope has done nothing He talks a good talk, but what has he done to legislate, to punish, whatever? I've had it with these people.
All right, story number one. And that was a great rant there. Story number one is refugees or invaders, and I've written about this, and so has Jasmine. We've got 85,000 Syrian refugees coming to the United States, 100,000 next year. This is jihad by immigration. And Ben Carson essentially said that that Islam is not compatible with the Constitution, yet we've got a political class here welcoming the enemy into our country and giving them welfare while they're at it.
And the difference with Europe is geographically contiguous with the Middle East, so they can't really keep them out. Whereas to come all the way over here to Canada, to the United States, the government has to actively bring them here.
When the two towers were struck by those airplanes, I thought to myself, it's time to limit Muslim immigration.
Right. Yeah,
Instead of doing that, this government has multiplied. It must be 100 or 1,000 fold.
They're throwing the doors wide open, and then they're handing out invitations. And and understand what he just said. Don't just limit illegal immigration by, securing the border, but also legal immigration. Article 1, Section 9, Congress gets the authority to prohibit certain persons from coming in the country, and that includes, the enemy, terrorists, criminals, the sick, syphilis, or whatever, tuberculosis. There's a reason for it. Okay, we're out of time. Jasmine, plug yourself.
blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. I host the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. Returning live on Monday, and I write at politicalpistachio.com.
Alex?
ConservativeCannonade.org. This week I will get my opus, my 18-page poem called Who Put the Rat in Democrat, and you will know the history of their perfidy.
My name is Douglas V. Gibbs, DouglasVGibbs.com. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. We'll see you next week right here on KMET, 1490 AM. See you then.
This is 1490 AM KMET, Banning, Beaumont, Redlands, and Palm Springs. News, talk, sports.
From ABC News, I'm Jim Ryan in Philadelphia, where the Pope-mobile has been on the move again. Pope Francis has spent the afternoon with seminarians here in the city of brotherly love and now has ridden in his open-sided car past the Liberty Bell and to Independence Hall. Francis, the son of immigrants himself, made that the theme of a speech delivered from the same lectern from which Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address.
When a country keeps in its memory and remembers its past, it continues to grow and to be renewed and to assume and take into its bosom new peoples.
Tonight, a concert to celebrate the World Festival of Families. I'm Jim Ryan, ABC